Municipal Meeting for December 3rd, 2009. I'd like to call upon our clerk to take the roll call, please.
Mayor Ron?
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Emery?
Here.
Trustee Fleming?
Here.
Trustee Forsley?
Here.
Trustee Klebanow?
Here.
Trustee Scott?
Here.
Trustee Seneca?
Here.
Manager Searle?
Here.
Attorney Perez?
Here.
Economic Development Director and Assistant Manager Kimball? Here. Police Chief Mulhern? Here. Deputy Fire Chief Wise? Here. Finance Director Van Boggett? Here. Budget Analyst Parker? Here. Village Planner Malik? Here. Public Works Director May? Here. Deputy Police Chief King? Here.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item before us this evening are the minutes of the committee, the whole meeting held November 12th and board meeting held November 16th. Any corrections to be reported at this time?
We did make a correction in them, and they're here on your copy, in front of everybody. So it was just that on the taxi cab, working the two places, that it is limited to 30 minutes. So we just added that.
Okay.
So that's all it was.
Okay. Thank you. Open forum. We have one open forum request before us this evening, and that's from Mr. John Spielman at 265 West 57th Street. Mr. Spielman, please come up to the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Spielman. I've been living here for about 14 years. And just a question that I had for the town. I love this town. I've been here for a while and do everything I can for it. The things is, I was going down the street, I'm just concerned about the Fuller's Car Wash deal that happened with the undocumented employees that are working there. I would like to know why it is that we have undocumented employees working in our town, that these people are hiring them. Can we hire, high school kids to do that job, or isn't it illegal?
Yes. No, it is illegal, and it's up to the employer to verify whether or not they have the proper documentation. But it's not something, obviously, that's condoned, and if we're aware of it, we would take proper steps to rectify that.
Right. See, I'm not like, I'm not a jerk. I'm not a racist guy. I have friends that are Hispanic. I have friends that are Polish, and they're doing the things the right way of coming into our towns and working and doing things. But when it said in the newspaper they're undocumented employees and they've been there for a while, I was just like, it just threw me. I mean, I've watched our town go from one junk guy to many trucks racing up and down my street with no brake lights, picking up garbage. And these guys, they're not supposed to be here. And landscaping companies are outrageous. People don't cut their grass anymore. It's just like it's growing. I just feel like, there's a place around there's multiple families living in there, and I just feel like Westmont is getting a little crazy with this. And it just bothers me because I love this town. This is my town. And I'm concerned about, I've been out of work for 8 months. I'm looking for a job. And here I see undocumented employees working in these places. I've been in the restaurant business all my life. I know that they're living in restaurants. Are we doing something about it? Can we do something about it?
I don't know. I'm sure the attorney could speak better to it, but I just know from my own experience in business, when you hire someone and you're required to fill out an I-9 form, that I-9 form does nothing but sit in the file. I'm not even sure that it has to be turned into the government. I think you just have to have it to show.
Right, but if you have a situation like Fuller's has now, they're going to go back, they're going to look at that, and there could be some substantial fines to the employer for violating the federal law.
But I don't believe we as a municipality have any jurisdiction over that or any way that we can enforce that. Do we, Anne Marie?
Well, the only way we could possibly enforce that, because a lot of that immigration is federal, so the only way we could possibly enforce anything would be through some sort of a business license, if we are requiring them to show proof
of every employee?
Of every employee being, resident.
Or if we know about it, we report it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like I said, I'm not against it. It's just that do it the right way. Do it like what all of our relatives have done. Do it the right way. Just don't, I mean, I just, you know, when the police department pulls over somebody and they're not supposed to be here, what happens to them? Do they, you know, I don't know what happens to them. I read Police Beat all the time or that thing, and I don't know. You know, it never says. These are just concerns I have because this is my town, and I'm concerned about my town. I'm going to stay here, you know. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in. We will take your comments under advisement if there's anything we can do, and I'm sure the manager and the staff are all mostly here this evening, that if we can do something about that. But it is true that when we hear of something like that, we try to be responsible as we can in reporting those kinds of things. But once again, it goes back, when you see something like this occurring, or residents, they need to call 911 or the police department to let them know, because we can't be everywhere at all times. But when they find out about things like that, they can look into them after that. And it's sometimes difficult. I've been in situations like that where I've been hesitant to call the police because I see something that's not right. But we need to do that. At least then it's documented. And if it gets, you know, if it's a serious offense, enough offense, then the police can certainly look into it. But we have to know, our departments have to know about those. And code enforcement has also done a yeoman's job of code enforcement in all areas, more than we've ever done in the past. So you can tell, you've mentioned we're moving in the right direction, but we always have a few glitches. But we appreciate your comments, and we will take heed. Thank you very much. That's the only request that we have under open forum. Next, we move to reports. The mayor, Jim Walsh, is here from Divine Wines, and he has a request that he would like to make before us this evening.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. My wife, Denise, and I own Divine Wines, and on a very sad note, we're not going to be able to continue the wine store. We have to close it down. It's 4.5 years of wonderful friendships, great people, great wine. And I appreciate all the support that everyone in this room, I see so many familiar faces, gave to us. And a special thanks to two people, Bill Ron, the mayor, and Tom Mulhern, who bent over backwards to help us. And I'll never forget you for that. But we're closing December 31st. My concern is we may run over that on selling out our inventory. And I know our liquor license is due January 1st, and I'm asking if you can prorate it on a monthly basis versus Denise and I have to pay $1,500 for the whole year. I really sincerely believe the alcohol part of the store will go like that because it's going to be 50 off. So it's a heck of a deal for everybody. But in case we don't, we'd like a 1-month extension if you could consider that for us.
Okay, we've had discussion with the village attorney, Tom Mulhern, and we think we have a solution for you. Tom, would you like to explain?
Mayor, when Jim and Denise came to us with this recommendation, we checked with our village attorney, and there is no provision in our ordinance for a 1-month license. Temporary licenses we really can't grant because they may not be able to get one from the state, and there's no provision. So it was on advice of the John Zemenecker village attorney that we bring this matter before the board to let the board decide, do we issue a 2010 license to Jim and Denise for Divine Wines, and then prorate it to the month and the months that they use. And then if they would move, they notify us their license would be voided or considered forfeit by the mayor. That's the only provision we could think of, rather than a 1-month license period. We really didn't want to start that type of practice because in state law that we're not, or with the State Liquor Control Commission, we're not sure if they will agree with that. So our recommendation was, again, the 2010 license, let them issue that at their rate for their current rate and then prorate back whatever months are unused.
Okay.
That has been done. There's no ordinance, there's no provision that provides for that, and that's why we're in front of the board this evening.
And Jim has also reported to me that your state license does not expire until April.
Until April 2010, correct?
2010. Right.
Anne Marie, then there's nothing that prohibits it, correct?
Nothing that prohibits it.
All right.
Okay.
I have no problem with that at all.
And
Me too.
No, fine.
we'll miss you. You've been a host to some good,
We've
good affairs.
made a lot of great friends and had a lot of great times, and it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
We
Any other
will,
comments?
then we need an ordinance, I believe, for this.
Did we want to put that on for Monday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will confer with you tomorrow, then, and we'll work on
That's
it.
fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Jim, and thank you all you've done in your business during the time that you've been operating here in the village. Thank you.
One last comment is, believe me, we wish from the bottom of our hearts that it would have worked out, because it's a great time and a great community, and I see a lot of great things happening here with everybody. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I wanted to mention was just to thank everyone for coming out for the Holidays Parade. Last Friday turned out to be a wonderful parade, thanks to all the efforts of the Park District, the village, all the different community groups that came out and participated. It was wonderful weather, and everyone that was there really enjoyed coming out that evening. And we also want to encourage all the residents to make sure they go over to Memorial Park to see all the wonderful decorations that have been set up, and we'll be there throughout the holiday season at Memorial Park. So it's a great place to take a little walk in the evening for a little exercise, and it's truly a beautiful sight to see. And the next thing I wanted to thank Peggy Chapinski and her third grade class at Miller School. I had the privilege of speaking to her class for about an hour several weeks ago and just had a wonderful time. I've spoken to a number of classes at different schools about village government and participated in reading programs, but her particular class was really a joy because those kids, and I keep on telling them, the more questions you can ask, the better I like it. I may not be able to answer them all, but we'll give it a try. And they asked more questions. It was just really a fun experience. And then I got a follow-up, a number of thank you cards that were created by her class that they brought and dropped off at my home. And it was, I'm just amazed at the creativity of some of these kids that are only in third grade. So we have some wonderful kids here in our schools in Westmont, and that was a great experience for me. And the next thing I would like to mention is that we extend our sympathies to George Wolcott, whose brother passed away last, I think it's been 4 or 5 days ago now. But he was only 38 years old. He was a firefighter for a number of years, not in the village of Westmont. He was a resident of Bolingbrook. But about 10 years ago, he was critically injured in a fire call that he was on, and he was strictly working as a volunteer, not paid for the work that he was doing. But he was hospitalized and had some very, very chronic health problems from that point on in his life. But we want to recognize George and extend our sympathies. And George also asked me to mention to Frank Trout to thank him for coming and speaking at the memorial service that was held in honor of George Wolcott's brother, whose name was Christopher. Thank you. And the next thing I wanted to mention is that we all need to shop the village of Westmont. The comment was made to me a week or so ago, we don't have all that many shops in Westmont. We do have a lot of shops in Westmont. We have restaurants, we have specialty stores, we have hair salons, we have retail businesses, we have offices. We need to patronize those businesses in the village. And there are indeed a lot of businesses to patronize. Every one of our businesses, I think, is hurting for more customers to come into their facilities. So we need to, as residents, help to support our business community as much as we can during these very troubled times. And finally, I would like to refer to a comment that was made by Trustee Emery during the holidays parade, and that is, she was asked by the interviewers what her big goal is here in Westmont, serving as a village trustee. And I think the answer that she gave is appropriate for us as elected officials, but also the elected officials in the library, the park district, the school district. We are all here to serve our community. Ellen asked that the residents come forward with their concerns and their problems. That's what we're here to try to do. We cannot solve everyone's problems, but I think this board, the village board, works very closely to try to answer and be responsive to problems that are occurring, questions that come up from our residents. And I think all the elected officials have and need to continue to be very responsive to our community. And that's what helps to make Westmont the great place it is and the great place for all of us to live and raise our families. And that is all that I have right now. Next, I'd like to call upon our village clerk.
I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate the chamber and the committee that put together their gala a couple of weeks ago. It was outstanding. They did a wonderful job. Everybody had a good time. And of course, Ron Gunther and his people and our village staff that worked so hard on that holidays parade, they do a phenomenal job. So I just want to thank all those people. Wish them the best during this holiday season. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, our village attorney.
I don't have any report, thank you.
Okay. Village manager Ron Searle.
Thank you. I just had 3 quick items. First of all, I passed out a press release regarding our final electronics recycling program that's going to be on December 11th. At the last meeting, I had mentioned that the county has notified us that they no longer have a sponsor for the program next year. We were going to be taking a hiatus with the program and had hoped to bring it back in May like we did last year, but as it stands right now, that doesn't look to be the case. But for this last event, we have partnered with Waste Management, and this is something that Trustee Scott had asked us to look into a few weeks back. The idea was to provide an outlet to recycle large fluorescent light bulbs. Those would be ones that are 6 and 8 feet in length. So we have an opportunity to do that at this last event. Of course, this is for residents. We're not looking for businesses to bring these in. This should be limited to residents that may have these sized tubes. So the event will be December 11th at the Ty Warner Overflow parking lot at the corner of Blackhawk and Plaza Drive from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The next thing I wanted to just comment on the poster behind the mayor here at the last Complete Count Census Committee meeting we had. There was an idea, a suggestion made that we take a number of the posters that our representative from the Census Bureau had brought in, and these happen to be ones representing different languages. We've got English, Spanish, Chinese, and Polish on this particular poster, but to put that up so that the camera can see and again identify the fact that we're working towards the census. April 1st, 2010 is the census day, and I believe, and I'll ask Trustee Klebanow if she remembers, our next Complete Count Committee meeting date I think is December 11th.
I think it's
January, I'm sorry, January 11th. Right, and that'll be at 6?
I believe it's still 7 o'clock here.
7 o'clock here in the order. And then the last thing I had was, at the last set of meetings, the board voted and denied a massage license. Staff was going to come back at the next set of meetings to recommend the reduction of the number of licenses that we've created from 10 to 9. However, we're trying to limit the length of the agenda given the closeness to the holiday, so we also didn't want to put it on this agenda and turn it in because there was an appeal period, and we didn't know if the person who had the license denied, if they would appeal it. Well, that appeal period has passed now, so that's not an issue any longer. So I was wondering if we could add to the agenda for Monday night an item to reduce the number of licenses from 10 to 9. That's all I have.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Trustees, start with Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. I just would like to echo everyone's comments on holidays. The parade was awesome. The weather was great. It was just a wonderful event. I think it was probably one of the best attended, and I think it was the 15th year, so it's really snowballing into a great event. Also, we have a lot of kids in Westmont that attend Montini, and I wanted to congratulate them on winning the football championship against Joliet Catholic. I think they're class 2A, I'm not sure. 5A? Whatever. But anyway, it was an exciting game, and it was great to see them go for the 2-point conversion and win. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Forsley.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Emery.
Just real quick, the Winter Ball was wonderful, and the Holidays Parade, I had a blast. In the past, I had been on the sidelines watching everybody go by, and this year to march down Cass and see how many people were actually out there, I had a lot of fun, and a lot of people came up and introduced themselves to me, and I made a lot of new friends, like Jen and Jim, and Jen runs daycare out of her home, and she said when the baby needs the bottle at 3 o'clock, she gives the baby the bottle and turns on the village board meetings. And I figured that was to put the baby to sleep. But, and I would, along those lines, I would like to thank all the people who consistently let us know that despite how painful all of us may think it may be, they actually sit through and pay attention to and appreciate the fact that these meetings are televised. And of course, anybody that wants to criticize me or us, my attitude has always been have at it. And I have a reason for saying that tonight. A lot of us typically don't read the Westmont Progress because of a problem they have with reporting facts. I read yesterday's, and when I got to the opinion part that said, village shouldn't hold cars if suspects are cleared, I read the Progress, and I thought, you know, at some point I need to tell all those people that watch these meetings thank you. Because in my opinion, there is nothing in this town that causes more discord and more disharmony and more anger in our residents than the Westmont Progress. If you don't know the meaning of a word, look it up. This week, the words impound and confiscate are not interchangeable. If you don't know the source of something, don't make it up. And if you don't understand something, call any of us, call the chief, call the mayor, call any of the trustees, email us, or God forbid, show up and ask some questions. But as far as I'm concerned, when I said at the parade, when I was interviewed, and I've said all along, Westmont isn't going to go very far unless the residents don't complain to their neighbors. They complain to us, because we at least can try to make things better if something's bad and keep things going if something's good. So I would like to see, I mean, I'd like to write a column that said as I see it, but I doubt they'd print it. But to be full of misinformation is nothing short of irresponsible. So again, my thanks to the people that sit through this and hear what really goes on and don't rely on this kind of thing and get angered about what we are supposedly doing when it's pretty far from the truth. So thanks for letting me.
Thank you.
Well said.
Seeing is believing.
Trustee Scott.
Thank you. We're going to have a code enforcement meeting on Monday at 6:30 here in the boardroom. And that's it. Thank you.
Trustee Klebanow.
Just another point, another activity in town. The Westmont High School Band has their 20th annual craft show. It's this Saturday, December 5th, from 9 to 3 at the Westmont High School gym. So everybody come and enjoy the crafts and help out the band. And I enjoyed Holidays tremendously. I thank so much for Trustee Scott to have me ride in his car. It was so cool.
And we'd like to thank you for not running us over.
Yes. You know,
Temptation.
careful with the clutch there. And I had a good time, and I had so much fun talking to the people. So thank you, and look forward to serving again. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Fleming.
A couple of things real quick. This year, as in years past, we have the decorating contest. You have until 5 p.m. on Friday, December 11th to turn in your entries. Each year now, I drive the vehicle that goes around and judges these. And this year so far, I have seen more decorations out than I have seen in years. And some of them are very well done. Businesses as well as residential, as well as multifamily. So all I can say is, by all means, please get your applications in. We also, when we go through, we have sometimes what we put in, we call at large. You may not be in it, but we in turn will say, hey, that's pretty good. So we go back and do the research, find out the address and who lives there, and do what we need to do. But by all means, so far, I can tell you, drive around town, it looks absolutely beautiful. And I still think there's other people that are not done yet. And as far as the holiday parade goes, I want to say to the fire department, Frosty says thank you very much for the being allowed to ride in the bucket this year. He said his view was much better and scooted out a little too soon. The weather's finally turned cold, but he said thank you very much and looks forward to seeing everyone again next year. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along, public hearing. Board to conduct a public hearing and adopt the proposed 2009 tax levy ordinance. We have Lisa Van Boggett, our finance director, in our discussion.
Good evening. Before you today, we do have a public hearing as required by law when a municipality's extension for the current fiscal year is 105% over the previous year. You have to have a public hearing to comply with the truth in taxation requirement. Our levy this year will be in excess of the 105% from the prior year. So we did post a public notice in the paper on Wednesday of this public hearing in compliance with the truth in taxation requirement. What I have, just a little thing just to kind of show just a breakdown of, so that people understand, there are 7 parts to the village's property tax levy. This includes the library, which is a separate entity. However, they are under our property tax levy. So what we have here are the 7 components of the property tax that the village imposes each year. We have the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which is one of our pension funds for our non-union employees. We have our police pension fund for the sworn officers, liability insurance, Social Security contributions, employer contributions for Social Security for all of our employees, our ambulance, and then our fire protection. And those are the percentages that each of those components are. As you can see, there is a large portion that is dedicated to pensions, including IMRF, the police pension, as well as Social Security. Those together are over 50% of the property tax levy for the village. And that does not include pension contributions that the library has included in theirs, because we just have their entire amount. So a portion of that is pension requirements as well for the library. We do have one increase this year. The village board has stated and has continued to go with their philosophy of attempting to keep a static tax rate for the village. What we have here is a 10-year history, and it's a little hard to read, so I'll just kind of point out a couple of things. This is where our individual tax rates have been for the past 11 years. The green line is the village non-pension levy, the ones that I brought up, the fire, ambulance, and liability insurance. And as you can see, that's the green line that started up here and has gone down to here and has remained static or very, very consistent for the past several years. The red line is the libraries, which did take a dip and then went back up. The library has their own board that establishes their tax levy rate, and that is their rate. We have the purple line is our IMRF and Social Security, so for the village contributions to pension, and that's in accordance with what we are required to pay. The rates are established by the Social Security Administration and by state statute through IMRF. So we are given an employer rate each year that we are required to contribute. So we levy in order to cover those projections. And then the blue line is the police pension contributions. We've had a lot of discussions over the past several years regarding the village's contributions and the actuarial required contribution established for the police pension fund during our board workshops, our budget workshops. We've discussed this extensively, and that is one area where there has been an increase in the rate this year to have the village's contribution reach 105% of the actuarial required contribution to help with funding that, since that pension is required to be 100% funded by the year 2033, and that is by a state mandate, a government mandate. So by 2033, that pension must be 100% funded, and one of the ways in which we need to do that is to establish 100% funding of at least the annual required contribution in addition to the arrears that we have. So that is the one area where you see an increase. And had it not been for this increase in the pension, we would have been under the 5%, 105%. We would have been between 4 and 4.5% increase. So the increase that you're seeing is attributable to that pension increase. Any questions?
Questions from board members?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here from the public that would care to give any input on this agenda item? Okay. Thank you. This will be on our agenda for Monday evening's consideration. New business. Oakwood Industrial Plaza parking. Board to consider ordinances to establish uniform parking restrictions in the Oakwood Industrial Plaza.
Sure.
I'm having trouble with these.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a lot of information in this item, and it is a combination of a lot of different issues worked into the same topic, and they fall under generally 3 different types of categories. One is the original request. This process actually started back in August with an email request about a certain parking restriction on Plaza Drive that I'll get into. And with reviewing that request, both the field inspection and review both in the Public Works and the police departments, there was a lot of issues in the Oakwood Industrial Plaza that needed attention, either in the category of inappropriately set up, or in many cases where there were restrictions in place that were not necessary, some restrictions in place that weren't covered by ordinance, and other places where there should be restrictions and it's signed that way in the field, but there was no ordinance that reflecting that. So there was the original request, better organization of what's going on in there, and then I call it housekeeping, if you will, for the different items. So I'll go through all of them. This request came in August of this year, and because learning of all these different related issues. It's actually my doing. I took it to the Public Works Committee meeting, which any new request would go to anyway, and introduced all of these other issues. We discussed that. We discussed it for a while and came to the conclusion that the best way to proceed was the basic recommendations that I was making in addition to the petitioner, and have a public hearing. So we did schedule that. We invited all business owners and addresses in the industrial park, and some came out to attend the actual meeting itself where I gave a presentation, and I'm giving you a very quick overview now because we did cover it actually 2 times at a Public Works Committee meeting. And we did this at the public hearing, took comments at the public meeting, and Wells had an open public response period too, where many of the comments came in by email. Before the last Public Works Committee meeting, you were given a collection of all of the different responses, including the invitation to the meeting and the minutes from that meeting. And I'll recap the conclusions that came from that. These are 2 attachments that I put together quickly at the time to use during the public hearing process, and it was kind of just to get an overview of all the different issues that were going on in this area. The area that was, these are the existing conditions, so the ones that were in red are areas that are currently signed as no parking, and many of these spots, whether they're these little islands, there are a lot of here to corners, there's a lot of no parking near this driveway or between signs, and there's a lot of restrictions that go on that have to do with, you know, it's more complex than this, but it has to do with like truck maneuvering. And those types of restrictions are on there. Sometimes the restriction is for the loading dock or the driveway that it's adjacent to. Sometimes it's for the one that's across the street, to eliminate the parking that's across from it. The original request was to eliminate parking here at 400 Plaza, and from there we reorganized. So you're not going to be able to memorize the difference between these 2 diagrams, but this was the proposed condition. And essentially the changes that were here was all of the anything that was timed parking has been removed. So there is no any parking that is going to remain is going to be untimed and unmetered, if you will. And for example, this restriction here, through the conversation and the experience of the police department, had to do with a business problem that was in one of these office buildings up here. That business no longer exists, so that issue wasn't there. And many of these are vacant as well. And the 2-hour restriction, actually that was one of the ones that wasn't covered anywhere in the ordinance. It was just existing out in the field. So the proposal was to very quickly was to make whatever parking was available untimed. We also changed the proposed change is to allow parking around the perimeter of the park. Our pattern in the town is there's no parking on the south side and no parking on the west side of any street in town, just blanket unless modified separately by an individual ordinance. So the alternating pattern was awkward, and in here the proposal is to allow parking around the perimeter of the park so that all the loading and unloading and the high use and all the soccer usage, all those vehicles are on the same side of the street that the park is as well. These are no parking here to corner. These are the driveways for the parking lot and widening an intersection. And besides the request, if you, going back, there are 3 places where parking's allowed on street now on Plaza. Only one was requested to be removed, and when I started the public hearing process, it was eliminating all the parking on that street because there was one small 5-6 vehicle space left on one end of a very long block, and then another 6-8 vehicles that could fit down at the other end of the block. And it, at the time, it didn't make sense to maintain that when there was actual, options for those parkers to use in there as well. Okay, that just got us to the initial proposal and where we started the public comment period. Quickly, during the public comment period, everybody was supportive of everything that was identified in here except those last 2 issues that I was talking about. These 2 locations, were spoken to very strongly about maintaining that on-street parking at those locations. So in the request that you have before you today, which if you've seen the markup of the ordinance, there's a lot of adds and additions to clean up the language. This is the only request that is included on Plaza Drive, and these two at 414 and this is 701 Blackhawk, but essentially the Plaza Drive frontage are not part of the request that you have before you tonight. To get a better view of what's going on there, this is the 414. It's actually a condominium office building, and there is very well used parking on the street. It's well used on the street. I've been in the parking lot, and if you go to the far north end of the back lot, there is space available, but they're individual condominiums. That doesn't necessarily mean that the business in here has parking that's close to where they're at, dependent on the time of the day and the arrival of the traffic. So if the parking were eliminated, the vehicles would physically fit, but it's a big inconvenience for the people that are using that now. So you've seen it in the correspondence. There's very strong request to maintain that parking on street there. The other end of the block would be down by Blackhawk Drive and Plaza, and this parking, although unused for much of the week, there's two very high demand periods for People's Resource Center that works out of this building, and they have a lot of, not just a lot of traffic, but a lot of frequently turning over traffic, and it's a very well occupied section, and they've got as well strong opinions as in form of a request to maintain that parking there. And again, nobody but me was requesting to eliminate it, and that was just to simplify the pattern on the street. Because when you look at the whole block, you could see all the, none of these are in ordinance either. These are because of these driveways. This is because this driveway. This is because across from this driveway. So there's a lot of here to corner stuff that we do administratively, and it was just simpler to say, no parking that side of the street. But that was my opinion. That wasn't the opinion of those who, attended. So with that, the ordinance, the bullet points that you have in the summary sheet are in those categories. It's to reestablish parking along the, I won't read every single bullet, but the A, B, C, and D, well, A, B, and D all have to do with converting the parking so that it's all adjacent Ty Warner Park. The bullet E, no parking on either side of Blackhawk Drive from Oakwood to Chestnut, that's along the junior high school there. It's already signed no parking. It just doesn't appear in the ordinance anywhere. So that's not a field change. That's just cleaning up the ordinance. And F is no parking on the north side of Plaza Drive adjacent 400 Plaza. That's the original request that started this whole process. And G is to revert any parking that remains parking on street will be there for an untimed period of time. There's no more 1 hour zones or 2 hour zones. And there never were 4 hour zones in there. So as long as that was the summary, and I don't know if there's any questions. We've covered this twice at a Public Works Committee meeting, and that's how the recommendation here. I know I don't know if Julian, there's representatives from Julian Electric here that had the original request, and I know People's Resource Center is here too, so there still may be comment on the subject. If you had any questions for me, I know I went through it quickly.
There's only one thing I wanted to add was that we did add a section in the ordinance in section 2 where all of this on-street parking changes that Steve talked about would be effective as soon as the signs are posted. So it's not like everything would happen necessarily at the same time because of the weather changing and the fact that some of the poles have to be placed in the ground.
Yeah, the signage was one issue.
We may have to wait on certain sections.
The biggest concern about implementing one of the changes is to take the parking off of the east side of Blackhawk Drive, and it's allowed now on the east side. To allow it on the west side, there's actually a painted stripe on the pavement that is not in the center, it's offset to one side to accommodate the parking. If we move it to the other side, I have to move the pavement marking, and I might not be able to do that before spring. The signage I could probably take care of, but with any of these changes, however they're decided Monday night, I would need time to implement that so it would be qualified with when appropriately posted.
Steve, do you have a rough estimate of the costs associated with making these changes? Cost to the village?
Oh, I couldn't tell you a number, but it's not a, I was going to say a significant amount. It would just be a couple $100 in sign posts. So a lot of the signs are there. Some of them it's just removal. It is staff time, but it's staff time during the day when, these are things that staff does during the day anyway. So there's no additional cost for doing this. Pavement markings, I don't know yet whether or not our sign shop can do that with paint. We might have to use a thermoplastic contractor, and the asset to that is Black Hawk Drive, to the south of Ogden, it still has pavement markings that are coming from that reconstruction, and I'd like to get that contractor to do the pavement markings on north of Ogden, assuming it gets approved. But I would coordinate that with them. So there's just several $100 in materials.
But the markings,
marking would probably be the most expensive part. I'm sure it would be.
Like thousands?
I would not even think it would approach 1,000.
Okay.
Is that the only place you need the markings, is on that one section where you're moving?
Yeah, and it's because we're moving it to the other side. The Baroque is the same, Plaza Drive is the same. Chestnut, the change on Chestnut is right now there's no parking allowed on either side of the street, except in the winter, which I think it's like 5 out of 12 months we allow it anyway, so we're just permanently allowing it. So those costs are just pulling signs out of the ground. There's no material costs. Much of this is just removing signs and a couple new posts. It's going to be
well, on
less than 1,000.
On the side that you're removing the stripe, how are you going to remove that stripe before you put down the new striping?
There's a way to grind it right off the pavement. They actually
I was just going to ask if you can start that, even though you may not restripe because of the cold. Could you get the old striping off and still put
one thing we
signs
definitely could do, and if we could not get new pavement markings down with a temperature spec, then there's ways to use temporary tape and put it down, and that's just an
I was just thinking that
additional
could get it started during the winter, where you can get the people started to shift over before some of those businesses start.
I would be afraid to be stuck without no pavement marking. That was what would make me nervous if I ground it off and couldn't get it back on. Because you're moving. Because if it was center line, you don't need a pavement marking. They know to follow the center line, but it's not. Where it's thirds. I'll figure it out. I mostly just didn't want anybody to think if it was approved on Monday and it wasn't done by Friday, that there was a reason.
Do we have anyone from the businesses that were mentioned that would care to make any comments on the presentation?
I'm Melissa Travis from the Food Pantry Director at the People's Resource Center, and I really appreciate the work that Steve has done on this. He really reached out to us and kept us informed all along the way. My one concern is if you remove that parking on Plaza at 400, that the people that are parking there are just going to come down and park where they're not removing the parking. So you basically just moved people down and essentially taken away parking spaces that we use for maybe an hour or 2 hours at the most. So I feel like we're the ones that are going to end up losing out in the whole deal. And I know you worked with us to try to do this, but if you eliminate those spots, if you look at that, there's probably 10 spots right next to that 701 building.
Point right here.
Yeah, point right here. There's 10 spots here that it doesn't look like it, but there are. I've counted them. There's probably 6 spots further up here to the east. That's where they're going to eliminate that parking. I'm afraid all those people, they're going to move down and park in those 10 spots, and I'm going to essentially only end up with 4 spots. So I know we're all working to try to make this work, but it's limited parking, and we have high volume at a couple times of the week that we really use that parking.
And remind me of the 2 peak times for that?
Wednesday mornings and Thursday late afternoon and early evening, so.
And just to elaborate on that one comment, the users that are parking here now are actually, I'm assuming they're employees, but they're for this building here.
Yeah.
And it's because the entrance is up here and they do park in here, but as many times as I've driven these parking lots since August that this has started, this parking lot for 401 is empty from here back all the time. So it's just closer for those people to walk. So in the event that this was eliminated, my prediction is that they would move into the parking lot.
And that may be, that would be fine then, so hopefully that will be how it works out.
It's a guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that they're working in that building too, because I've observed nothing more than just my observation, that they're there early in the morning and they leave at 4:30, 5 o'clock, so probably it. Thank you for letting me speak.
I share her concern, because if those people don't move to their parking lot in the back of the building, that's going to create a nearly unbearable hardship for the folks that come and use the People's Resource Center. And it's just such small blocks of time where that space is needed. I'd like to see us work to find a way to accommodate them, either signage, something, for those two-hour blocks of time.
I know I went over it quickly, but the request before you today and the ordinance as modified today does not include removing that. That remains as exists. It's not addressed. I want you to know that the comment came up, but it's not addressed in the materials you have now, unless you chose to add it.
Is there a way that we...
Well, if the concern is that the people at 401, because their door is right there, they'll just move down, to the east side of the 701 building, can you post on the far eastern edge of that parking that it's parking for People's Resource Center from here to corner?
Well, it's on-street parking. I can't think of any
Or time
example.
Time parking, I would do time.
Could we put time parking there? That would discourage people that are going to be in an office 8 to 10 hours from taking up that space. If we say 2-hour parking, that serves all masters very well.
How long are they even there? I mean, would 1 hour would even...
2 hours would make sure that they wouldn't get a ticket. I mean, they're not generally there, but in the worst-case scenario, that would be about the longest anybody would ever want to be.
And I don't think the people in the 401 want to get out and keep moving their car every 2 hours, so. 4 hours, they might get away with a break and a lunch, but,
Well, 401's got parking for employees.
yeah, they just don't want to walk.
They just don't want to walk it. But Julian Electric, when they were doing their building, they had to have employees parking on their property for all of them. And I think that's what they're doing. They're making sure their employees are parking on their property. And not everybody else is doing that.
Right.
So if timed will work,
It would certainly encourage people to use their lot.
yeah, because it's still a short jaunt just from the east side of that parking to the front door of 401. It's tempting.
Especially in the cold.
Any other comments? Anyone else from the public?
I'm Janie Green from Julian Electric, and our main concern with the 400 Plaza that we recently purchased is that basically in the late afternoon is when all of our trucks start coming to load and unload material, and it really gets congested, anywhere from 2:30 to 4:30, and a lot of times, where Plaza is just completely blocked, and the cars that are parked in front of 400 Plaza are people that work for Magnetrol. We don't have a problem with the People's Resource Center. They park in front of 701 because I'm out of the 701 building. But our main concern is our parking in front of 400 Plaza.
Here's light on.
Oh, okay, there we go. So that's all I have.
And a tractor-trailer maneuver requires coming from that direction, and they always have, to back up to the left so that they can see where they're going. So it's, it's important to the driver, to be able to pull as far to that side
Sure.
as possible, to make the maneuver into the dock without going up on the parkway on the other side of the street.
Safer.
So I understand the request, completely.
This isn't involving the new building that you bought, though, is it?
The 400, yeah, that's where it's at.
Has any been thought out by Julian about doing truck entrance in the back with all the property that they have back there?
Well, we just actually had the dock redone in front.
Okay.
That leads to 400 Plaza.
This was all rebuilt
Yes.
all the way out to the curb. I think he's talking about connections in the.
I don't really think there'd be enough for a 53-footer to get around that building into the back dock, because the parking lot's not that wide.
And there's
a different
grade
elevation.
differences.
Yeah.
I can't picture them all, but this is a retaining wall in here, so there's a big difference between, if I've got the right location.
No, it's between
Is this
these
one?
two.
Yeah.
701 and 400 is a big drop.
But there is a drop even from your other building, too, to the
Little
middle
bit.
building.
Yeah, it's just a little one from 406 to 400. But the big one is the 701 to the 400.
So what, you're trying to eliminate the parking totally in front of the
In front of the 400
400?
building,
The
right.
701, you're okay with even time parking. The 400, you don't want any.
Correct, because that's where all of the semis are staging.
Okay.
And
And what
trying
about
to
the
get in and
third
out.
building? How's your third building?
The 406, there's
Already
no
is
parking in front of
no
that
parking allowed
building.
there.
Okay, so we're already no parking in front of that.
Correct.
So you have clearance for your vehicles in there.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that, Steve?
Yes. Well, that's the request, is to eliminate, the parking here. And then the only foreseeable ramification is, where are these vehicles going to go? I would think and predict that it would go into their lot, but the concern being voiced is, will they move down and tie that up, of which was also a requested spot. I suppose you could do that you could do that by observation, and if it became a problem, readdress it. Otherwise, you could sign it right away, because one of the points is all the other locations in the industrial plaza is removing the timed parking to, simplify that as well. But either way, whatever you feel better about doing.
Now, going back to that condominium, was there any parking? Or is that also deleting the parking?
No, my recommendation during the public hearing process was to eliminate the parking, but that was just my thoughts, and it was ill-received. So it is not before you today to eliminate any of this parking on street here.
So what is that, a 414?
414 is an office condominium,
And you're gonna leave the parking in front of there?
yes.
That's not gonna obstruct any of the other trucks, whether it's Julian's or any of the other?
Not that has been identified.
How about if we do time parking there? So employees don't just sit their car out. I mean, it'd be great
Well,
for
they
their
are-
customers.
To speak for them, the reason they wanted to maintain the parking was for their employees. So their desire is to use it for employee parking.
So
The
cars would be
employees
there
that are
the
in
whole
these
day.
front buildings. There's multiple
Okay.
offices in here all the way to the back, and this parking lot loops around the back outside of the photograph here. These stalls right back here and much in this corner, I don't know if it's a dozen, but the many times that I've looped through that parking lot since August, there have never been vehicles back there. So that's why I was comfortable making the suggestion that we eliminate it. But that doesn't mean that this person in this unit might have to park way back here, to accommodate himself, and that's what the concern was from the property owners.
But, and I said this before, bottom line here is we're going to take out the 400 building, we'll leave it in front of the 701, put it as a 2-hour marking for 10 spots, 2-hour limit. I know we want to get rid of the time limits. As far as the condominium building goes, if there's enough parking spaces on that property, I'm sorry, but if you're going to have to walk a little bit to get to your office, that's the way it is. Those condo office buildings are set up as pods and set up that way to where that parking is like that. I appreciate what they're saying, I really do. But I honestly believe for the People's Resource Center, that is something that we need to put a time on. It'd be the only spot to put a time on it. As far as the condominium building goes, I appreciate what they're saying, I really do, but I still believe there should be no parking there in front of that pod building also. Then all you're dealing with is one section in front of the 701 building. You're then cleaning up the parking on that street all the way down to where if trucks do have to maneuver in there, or if, say for instance, they get real busy and some more trucks have to stage, you got more staging space. It's an industrial park.
But that's why I was saying, if we did anything, I would have rather had time so that we're equal with the other end, because we're looking at their customers, not the employees. If we're gonna make 401 put their employees to the back of the lot, but then we're gonna allow this condominium to let their employees park out front, that wouldn't be fair to 401 either. That's what I'm trying to do, is just balance it off. What we're doing to one, we should be doing to the other.
Well, you gotta take that around the corner and go do that to BMW then, and get all their employees off the lot, off the street over there? Because that's just, that's horrendous.
Is there a problem in front of the condominiums? Is there a problem right now in front of the condominiums with parking?
No.
No, then don't change it. Why would we create a problem if there isn't one?
Trustee Fleming's comments was exactly my line of thinking when I started all this.
Right, and I understand
Not
that.
that it's a bad suggestion, but it's,
But if there's not a problem, why are we creating a problem? The condominiums, there's not a problem with them parking full-time in front, let them do that. We want to accommodate the resource center, that's a 2-hour parking limit. That accommodates them. If you take out the parking in front of 401, that forces them to use that lot.
And Julian would be fine with that.
Yes.
That's what you're asking.
So,
Yeah, you just want to
So
get rid
that-
of what's in front of 400.
that would work for everybody.
Seems like it,
It's a win-win.
Win-win-win.
unless I'm missing something, that's what it seems like.
Seems like that to me.
I know we want to try to make it uniform, but
Sometimes uniform doesn't fit.
Well, it's not uniform, I was just trying to be fair. If we're forcing 401 to move their employees back there, we should be doing it to another building, that's all. And we wouldn't be eliminating the parking, we would still leave it open maybe for their customers if they happen to have a business that they have clients, instead of making their clients walk all the way from the back, but.
So then we need to time that space also then.
But that's what I thought, at timing, we could leave it parking, but time space, and that way we haven't totally eliminated the parking.
Employees that work in the building ought to park on the property.
if it's not a problem, why are we causing one?
I don't think we're causing one. I think we're trying to make it uniform.
Because they already came out and said they'd like to leave it open.
I understand.
So I don't know why we would,
But why not make the section uniform? If you're going to do something, if you're going to time the parking at the end of the block at 701, time the parking in front of the condo also. Because what's going to happen is, I guarantee that the people, somebody at 401 is going to contact the village when we're all said and done with this and go, well, you didn't make them do it, why do we have to do it?
people,
You know?
they've had the opportunity to come and speak.
Okay.
I mean, I
If
don't,
there's nobody that's unhappy with the status quo at 404, and the only discord is if we change it, you know, it doesn't have to be uniform. We're fixing a problem to address Julian's concerns and the people's resource concerns, and we stop there. I don't think we have to go all the way down the block.
which page? I have to look at the letter, she said we got some more.
Well,
letters.
414, that's from 414.
And
404.
And similarly, the 414 throughout this whole
419.
process has only heard all or nothing. They've not even heard the idea of, we sort of would owe them a delay to let them comment on that, if that was the direction.
I think it's a unique set of circumstances over there, and, I mean, I don't know that everything has to be cookie-cutter uniform. I mean, you just drive down Cass Avenue and, you know, we've got 30-minute parking and 4-hour parking and 15-minute parking. you know, it's not uniform. Sometimes uniform doesn't have to be, and you're right, why would we create a problem? If there's not a problem.
If it ain't broke,
If there's not a problem now, why go stir everything up? I don't know.
You've taken care of the concerns that our two business people have issued this evening. It's not cut in stone. There's nothing that says we can't come back again and look at it. You made some.
It's true.
Changes, some improvements. It's never going to be perfect, but I suggest, as has been indicated, we go ahead with the changes that you've recommended, and if we have more changes we have to make down the line, and we'll do them.
I mean, we just did the downtown area where we had the employees walk to the, by the train station now.
Right.
So we have made changes in other areas.
Right.
So, I go along with what the mayor says.
We're trying. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll keep on working at it to make it better, but it's a big improvement over what it was before.
So just to clarify, the draft ordinance that you have already prepared for tonight does not include any action at 414 and does not include any action at 701. So you just have to be aware of that, if that's how you're going to leave it tonight.
We need to
But we need to modify the 701 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Let her know what your direction is.
She's on it. She's on it.
I'm not sure exactly how to say it, just the lovely.
Thank you. Are you finished?
I am. If there's no more questions.
Is there anyone else? Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I just want to address one point, as I'm here, I've lived in Westmont since 1972. And I'm very proud that I've been in this village for that time. I got involved with People's Resource Center back in 2001 at the request of my pastor. And I retired in 2008 and came to operate the food pantry for People's Resource Center here in Black Hawk. Back then, we were serving 280 families. This last month, we serviced 650 families. Wow. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm able to give more food per family now than I was a year ago because of the great support that we've received from leading the village. But this whole community has really come behind and really helped out their neighbor. And I want to thank everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We hear nothing but positive comments about People's Resource Center constantly, so
Do a lot
keep
of
up the
good
good work. Thank you. Next item, Nature's Best Foods Incorporated liquor license. Board to consider reducing the Class 6 liquor licenses by 1 and then increase the number of Class 6 liquor licenses by 1 to accommodate a change in ownership of Nature's Best Foods Incorporated at 257 North Cass. Mulhorn, Chief Mulhorn.
Good evening, Mayor. Today, I spoke to the owner, George, of Nature's Best, and he is going to restructure his ownership to a percentage where he would not need a change in a liquor license. We spoke today, and he will still have the same ownership. It's his father passed away, he and his father were the owners of the business. He'd like to now to bring his mother into the business. He's changing the ownership around where she will own less than 20%, not more than 20%, which would not allow for the license change. She has gone through the background check, as has George, as it's been several years, and there was nothing to prevent this change from taking place. But this was just something that developed today, so I'm asking at this time for this item to be removed from the Monday's agenda.
I didn't even realize they sold liquor until I saw the agenda item.
They have a Class 6 liquor license for beer and wine packaged goods only.
Questions?
Nope. That was
I
an easy
apologize
one.
for not wearing a suit coat. I didn't know that, though.
Thank
Well,
you.
then, can you come back for item 11 in a suit coat? Just, okay. Just picking that one.
Next item, 6635 South Cass, Ashton Grove. Board to consider an extension of a zoning code variance request to exceed the maximum allowable density through December 6, 2011.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Ryan, and I'm back again this year, requesting the extension of the zoning variance for 2 years. Reason being, just because of the economy, instead of coming back again next year, which I'm sure I'll be here, to do it for 2 years.
Okay.
Any question?
Yes, Your Honor. Staff would just like to express their support for this developer's request. Kind of point out for the listening audience, the viewing audience tonight, think back about 4 or 5 years ago before Mr. Ryan did this development. Remember what was there? You know, we had the big controversy with Clarendon Hills about the CVS about 6 years ago, and then there was a not too attractive business that was immediately to the north of that, and Tim went ahead and knocked that down and seeded it and has kept it a lot nicer. And I think Mr. Ryan's development here is a really classic example of how you can take a stormwater detention area and landscape it so that it's an aesthetic benefit that can be used by the residents there. And it's even though it's a big depression area, it's quite nicely done, and I think it's a good example for other developers to follow.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Board members? You've had very positive comments about your construction, not only of those condominiums, but other homes that you've built.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
In that area.
Thank you.
We appreciate your quality, and hopefully the economy
Hopefully I
will
won't see you in here in 2 years, though.
turn around and things will start moving again for
Yeah,
you.
for everyone.
For everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
233 West Ogden Electric Car Outlet. Board to consider a special use permit request to allow the sale of electric golf carts in the B2 General Business District.
Hi, thanks for having us. We presented for the Plan Commission. We're seeking a special use permit to conduct retail sales and wholesale sales of electric golf carts and related accessories. I'm here to answer any questions for the petitioner.
I just wanted to point out to the board as well that there are special conditions in Section 2 regarding the use of the carts, what can be done as far as assembly or repair, and the fact that this special use shall automatically terminate if there is no use by this specific business for a consecutive period of 90 days. And these special conditions were reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they were acceptable to both the Planning and Zoning as well as the applicant.
For our viewing audience, could you just give a brief summary of those conditions?
Sure. There is no assembly of golf carts on the property. They are allowed to install accessories on the golf carts. Only repairs of battery replacements and minor similar repairs are allowed. No more than 6 carts may be displayed at one time in the 12.5-foot area located immediately north of the building. Other golf carts shall not be displayed in the front yard. Deliveries of golf carts may occur or shall occur on the subject property, not on the street. And as I indicated earlier, the special use would terminate if not used by this applicant for a consecutive period of 90 days or more.
What about test drives?
They'd be conducted on site.
On the property?
Yes, not on the street.
Could we decorate them for next year's holidays?
Yeah. How many would you put in the holidays parade?
We can do that.
Is this a business you've had before, or is this you're just starting out, or?
This business is located in 6 other locations in the United States. It's a newer business, though, mostly in warm climates. The market here, the owner of the company lives here in Chicago, and the market here would be a lot to the universities, a lot to casinos, to factories that have, large factories that have golf carts inside. The other markets that we cater to are more towards communities where there's golf, communities like in Arizona or in Florida. So we'd be more towards an industrial, commercial type use really for these. And this is a destination location where people come in and visit the showroom here from different areas in the Midwest.
Are you going to be selling the ones that can't go on the street?
No. There's some that are sold in other locations that can go on, that they're legal in the communities, but I don't think that they're legal here in Illinois.
Can they pass a new ruling on that? on golf carts?
Chief Mulhern might be able to speak to this as well, but it's staff's understanding that they're only street legal under certain circumstances. They can only go on roads that are 30 miles or less. They also have to have taillights, headlights, brake lights, turning signals, etc. So there are a number of criteria, and I'm not sure if the base models include those.
Yeah, they could be equipped to have that application. We don't VO market though anyone in the Midwest, driving these on the street to use as a vehicle though. That's not what it's intended for. Although I guess someone could do that based on that requirement. It would comply with that.
Well, I've seen them up in Wisconsin in the Lake Geneva area. I know
Right by
Abbey
Abbey Springs, they have them. Yeah.
So I was just wondering if it was going to move down since the state has made a new law for it.
Well, it would comply. I guess it would comply because they do have, they can get a unit with turning signals, a horn, and things like that.
They have them down in the area where my dad lives. I mean, that's primary source of transportation. It's economical and easy.
Right.
So it's down around the Phoenix area.
Yeah, there's an office in Scottsdale.
How do you publicize this? How are you going to get the word out that we're, because you got them in Arizona, I can see, in Wisconsin and down south, by the resorts, you see those all the time. How are you going to do it here?
Part of it is going to be a corporate headquarters, and the owner of the company lives here in Chicago. As far as getting the word out, we are on Ogden Avenue. We want people to be able to come. It's really a destination point. We don't think we'll be, attracting a lot of people off the street to buy a golf cart. We're really going out to the industries we're focused on, and this is a pretty good central location to be.
Okay.
When industries need them, they'll find them.
They'll find them.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, we hope to go into Wisconsin and down to St. Louis and Indiana.
You'll still market so that people know you're in the Midwest for, the uses that you described, because I know our big apartment complexes use them too here.
Right.
And we'll be happy to give you a list of recommended hotels that people could stay at when they
Okay,
visit.
wonderful. Yeah. No, it's more of it's more of a targeted market where, not many people are driving looking for a golf cart, but those that are in the market for one, this is an easy location to find and very visible location.
So the sales tax revenue will be the same as as automobiles?
Yeah,
Only,
as far as I know.
Of course, a lot less amount per unit.
We hope you sell a lot.
We hope you sell a lot too.
Any other comments?
Just on the new law that came out, I did read it, and it's my understanding that they're allowing them in Illinois, but each municipality has to pass an ordinance allowing them if they want them. So that's part of the law. And she's right, they can only cross streets that are 35 miles an hour or less. Otherwise, they have to go at their lights. There's a lot of restrictions, but you have to allow it first. So they just can't come in Illinois to drive from one community to the next. They'll keep using it as a car.
The train station.
I know.
I personally think in some areas, recreation areas where they have those, they're a very serious hazard for people that are driving automobiles because they are going so slow. And it amazes me sometimes that there aren't more accidents, but you come up on them so fast that people have trouble adjusting their speed when they're allowed to travel.
I was recently in Arizona, and they don't have it, but in Illinois, one of the requirements are they have to have a slow-moving emblem, that orange triangle on the back.
Okay.
And that's another restriction they have to have in Illinois.
Yep.
Thank you, Randy. Any other comments? Okay, we'll be on our agenda for consideration on Monday.
Let's come back Monday night?
Monday night, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, 328 South Wilmette. Clearwater, Board to consider the following request. A, zoning code variance request to permit more than 3 antennas on a structure, and B, zoning code variance request to permit an equipment shelter in the required front yard setback.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kimberly Klein. I'm representing Clearwire, who is an affiliated entity of Sprint Nextel. You may have seen commercials that have been rolling out lately called Clear. Sprint Nextel is bringing the 4G service to the Chicago market as well as other markets nationwide. And Clear Wireless, as their affiliated entity, is sort of responsible for the rollout of that. You already have, as you know, a number of antennas that provide wireless services on your water tank. And Sprint actually already has what we consider 4G, or WiMAX antennas on the top of your water tank that have already been providing the 4G service somewhat in this area. What they've found in the last year is that that service, the efficiency and reliability of it hasn't been what they'd like. So they're proposing to bring 3 more 4G antennas to the water tank and 2 microwave backhaul dishes. And those microwave backhaul dishes are designed to enhance the 4G services that are actually already being provided in your area, because microwave apparently has a wider and fatter bandwidth and can just make the service overall sort of more reliable and more efficient. So the microwave dishes you're going to see are new. They're one's 24-inch and one's 12-inch. They're round, and they're going to be mounted to the hand railing like you see all the other panel antennas. And then the 3 panel antennas are exactly like all the other ones you have on there. And we have agreed to comply with any aesthetic requirements that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends. And pursuant to that, we'll be negotiating a license agreement with the village. I've already given first comments draft round to the village, and the village is expected to respond pretty soon. And so it'll be an additional income stream for the village as a result.
Did you say additional revenue stream? Is that what I heard you say?
What I said, yeah.
Very good words. We like
Yep, that's the upside. That and better wireless services for your constituents.
So what,
Comments?
what would the total for Sprint or Clearwire, what's the total number of antennas on the water tower?
With the addition of the new ones?
Yes.
From what I'm showing, Sprint has, it looks like 3 on the top of your tank. And so now they're adding 3 more on the rail and 2 microwave dishes. And 1 tiny, what they call GPS antenna that just works in conjunction with those. But we can count that as an antenna. So frankly, this is adding 5 to the 3 that Sprint already has. And then you have a number of other panel antennas already on the railing that I believe are assigned to other wireless providers.
Right. Shannon, do you know how many companies we've got up there now?
I believe that there are 4 companies represented with 21 total pieces of, or 15, excuse me, total pieces of equipment. The 6 new pieces would represent a total of 21.
3. Here comes Glenn.
Glenn Liljeberg, our ET person, would like to make a comment.
There's actually 3 on the water tower.
Okay.
And these antennas are a lot smaller than the clusters that are up there now. These are just single, where the ones that are up there are 3 antenna clusters, but 3 antennas on each one of those. So there's 9 for each carrier up there right now. And these are a lot smaller in footprint. So
What carriers are up there?
we have Sprint, T-Mobile, and AT&T. Yeah.
What kind of security measures do we have for them going in and?
They have to check in. The gates are locked in the evening, so outside of hours, they have to check in at the police department before they're let onto the property, and then they have to check in at the front office during regular hours to get on.
So if something would happen at, 2 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning, there's a way to gain them access to repair it or whatever.
We have a whole check-in procedure that we've had the tower, the carriers up there for a number of years, for at least 8 years now, so we've had no problems with that. And sorry.
Do any of these new antennas render the current ones obsolete?
No. This is strictly an enhancement to the existing service. And because we were originally going to tie it into the existing Sprint lease agreement, but because they are 2 separate entities, this is being handled as a totally separate lease agreement. So this would add a fourth leaser or a fourth person to the tower, but technically it's in conjunction with an existing lease.
Okay.
How are the fees decided?
This one was based on, we took how much of the footprint was on the water tower by the other 3 carriers, and then this was a lot smaller footprint, so we reduced it accordingly for what we came up with the attorney. Proportionally, yeah.
Are we comparative to other communities?
We get pretty good rent on our tower, yes.
Good.
Is there a separate fence area around that in addition to the fence going into the public works area?
No.
There is not.
No, just the perimeter fence at the Public Works facility
Okay. And
is
that's
what's there.
security enough in your opinion? To keep away from
Well, I mean, the water tower is more of a security concern than the antennas are.
Okay.
You know, so we have alarms on the water tower itself, and
Okay.
Well, have you got high voltage boxes near the ground?
there are boxes on the ground, but they're fully enclosed. So I mean, there's nothing that anyone could get hurt on the ground.
Okay,
Everything
because
is
a lot of towns have put a peripheral fence around that just because, like how the mayor's concerned, extra security just around the water towers with all of that equipment.
Yeah, I don't think they've done that yet, and Steve's not here. They use the underside.
The cop is
Oh, you were hidden. No, I was looking this way and I didn't see it. They store a lot of equipment underneath the water tower as well, and I think that would get in the way of their day-to-day operations if they did put a second. You could answer to that, but yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Gwen.
This is going to end up having another utility shed down on the ground.
It's another pad, so it's not a shed. It's just a steel box that gets placed onto a concrete pad.
Okay.
And it's going between an existing pad and the fence line. So it's pretty much an unusable space because it's blocked in already by the existing carriers that are already on the ground.
I was never too worried about security. We got the cops constantly gassing up back there, so I don't, and that's now their exit out. They have to, I believe, isn't it, where they have to leave that way? So they have to go right past the tower just to get out of that area, so I don't think we have too much to worry about.
What about staff recommendation on the aesthetics and that's mentioned in here?
The staff report did contain a lot of discussion on the aesthetic of the tower, as it does have a significant impact on the structure itself as well as the surrounding neighborhood. Part of the thought was that perhaps the 3 antennas maximum was to try to help mitigate that. So it was suggested that the interduct, which is used to contain the coaxial cable, actually be in a white color, and ideally that would be a maintenance-free integrated white as opposed to a paint, and that long-term these cables would then, as they need to be replaced or as the village does maintenance, go to white so that they would blend in a little bit more with the surroundings. This would be something that would be done over time and slowly, but it was felt at the staff level that this would be an important goal to try to mitigate the number of structures and wires there.
I also wanted to mention that these variances that are being requested are contingent upon approval of the actual license agreement, and it's in a license agreement, not a lease. Mr. Zemanek's actually doing the negotiations, and he wanted to let me tell you, or have me tell you, that the initial annual payment is $18,720 with a 4% annual increase over a 30-year term is what they're talking about. And it's expected to be presented to you at the next committee of the whole meeting, the license agreement is. And he also wanted me to mention that in the past you have granted similar types of variances.
My only concern on that is that we have granted similar types of variances, which is why I asked what the companies were. So it's Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T. Now Sprint is obviously affiliated with Clearwire. Under the Federal Telecommunications Act, we are forbidden to discriminate against any carrier. So if Clearwire Sprint is now up to 6 and T-Mobile wants to increase to 4Gs, then AT&T wants to, is AT&T Verizon? No. Verizon's are, okay, Verizon comes in and they want the same type of thing on that water tower. What we give to one, we cannot deny to another, basically. So we might end up with looking at what Sprint and Clearwire are doing, a huge number of antennas on that water tower.
Yeah, I would say, go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say to that, just so you know, Verizon has 2 existing towers on both sides of town. I don't see them wanting to come onto that tower. The other thing, too, is we're probably approaching capacity on that tower anyhow. So that the structure would actually preclude adding many more antennas that
Yeah,
that
because I'm
structure.
looking at
So-
these pictures, and it's, if the other two want to go to 4G and add more antennas, you're going to end up with a megapod on top of the tower.
When you're saying the structures come in their capacity, how do we determine what capacity is on that?
Our structural engineer, the company that we hired to review the towers, approves or denies what goes on that tower for wind load and so forth. So.
Oh, okay.
And every time we want to go somewhere and either put an additional antenna on or install something new, be it a tower, a water tank, or building, we run a structural analysis by our own engineers anyway. We hire consulting firms to see even whether that's feasible, because nobody wants to create any liability issues, right, of, putting equipment on something that's structurally unsound and then they're having, problems thereafter. So we did run a structural. We gave it to planning and zoning, and, they rely on their independent consultants to, either concur or disagree with those results.
Thank you.
Is that water tower designated for any painting? Will it interfere with anything?
In speaking with Mike Ramsey, he said that we're on a schedule to paint probably within a 5 to 10-year window. He also mentioned that the tower itself is 52 years old, and structures like that have a life expectancy of 50 to 70 years. So, we probably need to kind of start thinking long-term how we want to accommodate those things anyhow. The discussion at the staff level was that if we do, if it's still there and viable in that window when we need to repaint, then we could either, when the lines come down for the repainting, that would be the time at which the interduct would be changed out or painted to match.
Okay, but we're not looking within the next year, 2 years, or 3 years. It's probably going to be like a 5 to 10 year before it's
right, before it would be a necessary maintenance issue.
Well, living behind the water tower, the antennas have never seemed to bother my neighbors or myself. Nobody's ever complained to me about them. So when I tell them the village is getting money for it, they seem to be happy. I'll probably get tons of emails now on this one, but.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For coming this evening. Mutual Aid Network. Board to consider an ordinance authorizing execution of the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network.
Thank you, Mayor. This, too, is an item that we've reviewed in greater detail at the Public Works Committee level. The Village of Westmont is already a member of a DuPage County mutual aid network, and this network is a statewide organization. One of the biggest differences between the DuPage County one, I'll say it was very pioneering and innovative, and in fact, they were held up as a model for the rest of the country as for other regions looking to get into mutual aid type networks. Here in Illinois, they've, based on what was going on in DuPage County, instead of doing it county by county, they are looking to institute a statewide system. And one of the big differences with the statewide system is that it was structured complying with the criteria that is established by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So given that it's, I'll just say its structure is set up that way that when implemented, costs incurred doing a mutual aid response would then be eligible for federal assistance should it be declared a disaster and other criteria come into play, whereas the way the DuPage County network is not as well. Secondly, the purpose of mutual aid is when you can't help yourself and you need other resources. We already have excellent relationships with our immediate neighbors, but if you had a horrific disaster that affected much of DuPage County, then everybody around here would already be dealing with their own issues in their town, and there would be no assistance available. So this allows for a bigger reach. Membership, there would be no obligation to respond just because we're a member of the network, but it allows us to be able to, and it allows us to gain access to the bigger network in the event that we hope we never have, but if we ever needed it. It follows the same systems with any public safety mutual aid network. There's a nominal annual cost, I think, I forget already, it's like $250 a year for our size population, and that's for them to cover their administrative issues. Locally, I know the Bolingbrook and the Village of Villa Park have been members, they're the inaugural members, and Villa Park has already responded to an event that happened down in the Champaign area, earlier in the year. So it's already well used, and there's most of through our meetings at the DuPage County Mutual Aid Network, there's a lot of support, and everybody is moving towards joining this network.
Comments?
It's an especially good thing for towns along freight rail lines like we are in the event there's ever a derailment or a toxic spill.
Hazardous.
They're disasters for one town, and the number of other towns that respond to these things to help out with cleanup and relocation and all that is phenomenal. So that's just one of the many ways that, if necessary, we could benefit and or help.
Thank you. Next item, Water Conservation and Protection Program. Board to consider a resolution supporting the Water Conservation and Protection Program established by the DuPage Water Commission.
Mayor, this actually sounds like something new, but it's essentially things that we're already doing. We already, as being a member of the DuPage Water Commission, are already governed by certain water conservation restrictions. This campaign is a countywide or a commission-wide effort to, bring awareness to water conservation, and this is essentially, this agreement and pledge is essentially what it is. It has no financial ramification to it. It's just our acknowledgement of our efforts to promote and support the program by the commission to bring public awareness to water conservation. And Trustee Scott attended a presentation at the commission with us last month, and being a Great Lakes water user and part of the Great Lakes Compact, we're a region that are not part of the watershed that actually returns water to the Great Lakes when we use it. Our water all heads, south, and our wastewater or our used water. So it is important in the Chicago and the whole Northeast Illinois that we participate in that effort to reduce our impact on the amount of water we draw out of Lake Michigan.
Comments? Questions?
Thank you.
Village Board meeting time. Board to consider an ordinance modifying Section 2-51, time and place of regular meeting.
This item was requested at the last Committee of the Whole meeting by Trustee Seneca to bring it to a board agenda for discussion. At the same time, she also asked that we look at adding a consent agenda item to the agenda. I had distributed earlier this week, just for discussion and review, some ideas on how that might work, and our plan is to bring a consent agenda item to the next Committee of the Whole agenda. But this item would simply be to change the start time from 7:30 to 7 p.m. And I believe the intent was for both sets of meetings, the Committee of the Whole and the Village Board meeting.
Okay.
And the reason for change would be?
Get out earlier, except
You guys want to watch Dance
one
with the
for
Stars,
all,
that's all.
one for all and all for one, the Six Musketeers. There's one musketeer that it would cause a problem to.
Potentially.
Potentially. Because of familial obligations and,
Say me.
okay, it's him.
Getting 7 here, it's a little bit tougher
Yeah.
to get here by 7. I mean, I can do it, it's just a little tougher.
Yeah, he's got to pick Michelle up, so if that's a problem, then
I mean,
we leave it where it is?
well,
I
that's
prefer.
why we're on a committee.
No, I prefer to stay at 7:30. I struggle to get out of the house in time to get here, between dinner, especially if I have to feed my grandson or something, but I don't see any problem. And the other thing, too, is I kept thinking, does that mean finance meetings start at 5:30 instead of 6? And when we turn around, everything's going to have to start earlier and earlier. So I prefer myself to stay at 7:30.
I think part of the reason, and I know we've had like some side conversations on this, the past couple of years. we demand a lot of time from staff, and if we can get staff out of here a little bit earlier, I think it's worth it for
We're
that.
really neutral on this. I mean, I appreciate that concern, but, you know, it really doesn't matter to us. And like Trustee Klebanow pointed out, it would impact, you know, the possibility or the ability to schedule some of our committee meetings, and that's something we'd have to work through if you decide to change it. We'd either have to look at different meeting nights or shorter agendas or more frequent meetings. You know, it might generate more frequent meetings for committee meetings. So there might be that kind of give and take effect.
Back to the beginning, if it disrupts Mark, I'm not against it.
If it's just market effects, then oh well, too bad.
Well, Mark could come late. I mean,
no, the other way.
You realize whether you start at 7, if I'm here, you were still getting out at 11.
Well, Mark,
I know.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter when you start.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
What is it to be here?
No, but I was also
meeting. It's a Forsley meeting.
But I was also thinking that there was a couple meetings ago. You came in about 5 minutes before the meeting. You were, and I think that happens to a lot of people. That, you know, they're struggling to get here by 7:30. They're going to struggle even worse to get here by 7. I don't think the half-hour difference is going to make that.
You and I never have problems, do we? We're always prompt.
No, I have a theory. If you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. So I'm crazy about things being prompt.
You know, it's.
If it causes a
No, I mean, I certainly, we don't want to cause a hardship on anyone.
You know,
And-
I think Trustee Klebanow brings up a good point about starting the other meetings earlier too. That, you know.
It might impact.
I was selfishly looking at my own.
Okay.
But I think that's a
I
good.
can honestly say, as far, and Steve May and I have talked about it, as a matter of fact, we did at the last Public Works Committee meeting. Public Works, we're not even going to attempt to try to have them on nights of the meetings.
You can't.
Based on the agendas and what go on, so.
Might have to move other meetings, too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to me, it works out a lot better that way. I know that it may cause problems with, you know, some of the other people's schedules or whatever, but I find that the meeting can be more informative. You can get through more stuff that way at one setting than you can either before or after a meeting. Even if we moved it to 7 o'clock and we put the meetings after the meeting, we still have to have some of the staff here after the fact. I mean, I'm not opposed to changes to 7 or 7:30. It's, I mean, no matter what you do, there's going to be a ripple effect somewhere.
Right.
But, I mean, the other
Well, and it's
option-
change. I mean, it's
Yeah,
hard to change.
Sure.
You know, if we always started at 7 and wanted to switch to 7:30, I'm sure we'd have a lot of discussion about that.
Exactly.
Sure.
You know, so it's all revolves around change. I know I did ask John Zemanek if it would be a hardship for him, and he said, you know, he thought he could make it by 7, no problem, but that it would certainly be a little harder on him. So, you know, we don't want to make it hard on anybody. You know,
Let's leave it at
obviously.
7:30.
It's fine. Leave it at 7:30 then. I mean, I have no problem with that.
Mostly for Trustee Forsley. though.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
You can throw me in that one, too.
I think also, once we
We had a
get
really good
into
spot
in
watching the
the
parade.
next committee of the whole, when we start talking about
Yeah,
the
with a
consent
rifle.
agenda scenario, the consent agenda scenario may shorten it up,
That would help.
even having it to 7:30. Once we maybe get into that discussion with the
Yeah.
consent agenda, it may speed that time up,
That's true.
allowing it, you know,
true.
depending on how we would work with that, so.
Don't count on it.
No.
Speeding it up?
It's not going to speed things up, but, no, I do think it, but I'm also looking at the future for future trustees sitting here and who may have full-time jobs, who may be on a tight schedule, either trying to get back and stuff. And I think, you know, I don't want to take a chance of limiting the chance of having some good qualified people sitting here who, you know, may have to struggle to get here at 7, and that
Go to
may
8
require
o'clock.
them not to.
You want to go to 8 o'clock?
I could even go to
I'm
midnight, but
kidding.
I can outblast you guys at night. We all know that, but, no, I also look at future, you know, trustees sitting here.
So let's just remove it from the.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, thanks for bringing it up.
Sounded like a good
Seriously,
idea
I mean,
at
it's
the
a nice
time.
discussion.
So what about the committee meetings that we have starting at 6? Are we going to try to just continue that the way it is, or we want to consider changing some of those, maybe Public Works at least to a different?
We've already made that change.
What about some of the others?
I mean, it depends on your agendas, I think, is the
We've pretty
biggest.
much left it up to the individual committee members. The board as a whole hasn't made a decision. We could do that.
Okay.
But we've kind of left it up to the committee chair to work with the staff people to meet everybody's schedule.
What we're trying to do is what you were saying.
Yeah.
So staff doesn't have to leave 2 nights in a row if they're going to, like, public safety.
I mean, when we knew we were going to have that long agenda, when we had the Oak Brook people meet us up at the station, then, you know, everybody
We
understood
did it on a special day.
we needed a special meeting, so.
Right.
Yeah, so we work with
We can
the
easily do that.
people.
But I
so
mean,
it's all right.
you know, I can tell you though, going into next year, we've changed the Public Works meeting to, and as it stands right now, we're shooting for the second Tuesday of every month.
Is that on the village calendar for 2010?
It will be.
Yeah, I think it's
They're gonna get it
That's
on
one of
there?
the reasons why we talked about at the last Public Works meeting, is to get that information through to Larry, so he
Oh,
knows.
I think that's a great idea.
And
I'd
so,
like
I
to
mean,
see us do that with more
We just basically
meetings.
scheduled it second Tuesday,
Yeah, 'cause a lot gets.
once a month.
It definitely can be very difficult when you have a committee meeting at, 5:30, 6 o'clock, a board meeting, an executive session, and then another committee meeting. I mean, so the more we can spread them out, the better.
Right. We want to try to avoid as many Forsley nights
Absolutely.
as we can.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Actually, the only Forsley nights are executive session nights. I mean, our meetings end at a decent time usually.
I don't know, it's 9:15, it's about looking like a Forsley night.
But we're almost through here.
Let's
go, next item, let's go. Keep
What
it
time
going.
does the Forsley clock start? 10?
For the sake of the people who are watching, a Forsley night means a late night, not just that he shows up.
Thank you for clarifying.
Moving right along. Fireworks funding. Board to hear an update on raising private funds for the 4th of July fireworks.
Just a bit of history on this. This was back on the committee of the whole agenda back on August 13th, and at that time, the board discussed it, and there was a decision to remove it, to look at some ideas at ways to raise funds for the 4th of July fireworks in the future. We looked at a number of different communities that had some donation programs, tried to get some information from them. Kind of the consensus that we were hearing from the other communities is don't expect to raise large amounts of dollars, for your fireworks event. That's been their experience. We've had a couple of meetings of the Administration Finance Committee where we've talked about this item. At the last one, we also we had representatives from the Westmont Special Events. We had the Westmont Park District here. Chamber of Commerce was here, all in the same room talking about this particular item. And that committee kind of created this task force involving those entities, and a couple of the trustees as well have been involved in those subsequent meetings. The reason I wanted to put this back on the agenda was since we kind of left this hanging out there on August 13th, it was just to give an update to the board as a whole. At the last Admin Finance Committee meeting, I think there was kind of an understanding that we would go forward, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, so if any trustees had a different understanding, let me know. But my understanding was we were going to go ahead and fund the fireworks for this next year. This task force was going to go out, try to come up with ideas and methodologies to raise funds to offset some of that funding. And whatever the difference would be between what we could raise and the actual cost of the fireworks, we would look at possibly reducing the holidays funding. And I think there was some discussion too, that there would be a certain threshold where, if it got reduced too much, they'd have to look at canceling holidays except for the tree lighting ceremony. I think everyone agreed that that was something that we would continue to do. It's something we did before holidays. So that was kind of how that was left. Now, since that Admin and Finance Committee meeting, there's been a couple of meetings of this task force, and unfortunately, I haven't been at any of those meetings. I know a couple of the trustees have. I know Fred, I forgot to mention Fred's part of the task force. He may have some comments that he wants to make about that as well. But my goal was just to give this update to the board. I don't know if you want this continued any further on the agenda in the future. The task force is supposed to be coming back to the Administration Finance Committee at their January 4th meeting to kind of report the status of the ideas for raising funds.
Yeah, we'll probably have a better idea for you about that point in time. We did have a joint meeting with particular companies here in town this past Tuesday. We are meeting again in 2 weeks, and we are tossing ideas back and forth, trying to find a way to continue to operate all of the events. And we kind of set forth the listing as I think we considered it, and again, I have to say the same thing that Ron said, but we came up with an order of fireworks, Taste of Westmont, holidays, and then you had other items that would fall in there, such as the concerts in the park, Red, White, and Barbecue, Harvest Festival.
Car show.
Yeah, well, the car show, I think, is pretty well being taken care of by Westmont Special Events, but the main priorities right now that we're looking to try to keep as they are presently are the fireworks, the taste, and holidays. Those are the 3 priority items that we're working on right now. And hopefully, if things go well, it's going to work out okay. It's going to take a little bit of work to get to it. It's kind of a new thought and idea, and I have to give kudos to Larry Forsberg from the Chamber, who came up with the idea on working on this particular project. And I find him to be very forward-thinking, and he's got some great ideas. So we're going to continue to work on it.
It's still in the brainstorming.
Yes.
Session where we're not sure, they're not sure exactly where they're going to go, but hopefully they'll come up with some.
I think we'll have a better idea in a couple of weeks.
Better ideas after the next meeting.
I'm serious. Just, Trustee Forsley, throw out your idea. I thought it was, he propelled himself into genius mode. Go ahead.
You're kind, but I don't think it's that far.
I thought it was a great idea.
No, when we were talking, the Sprint came and said, I just jokingly said, well, there's 18,000 towards our fireworks, and then thinking.
That we haven't had in the past. That's new money to the budget.
I mean, if that were proposed, and then do you go to Sprint and have Sprint fireworks?
Well, they're already going to.
I mean, you get a big company to come out and.
Take the 18,000, put it towards it?
I mean, we can earmark it if we didn't see this coming. We can earmark it, but if they want to call it the Westmont Clearwire Sprint Lexus Toyota fireworks display, that's an additional charge when you buy the name.
Right.
Yeah, the money's coming for that space on the tower.
Right.
And then if they want to go further and say, well, we'll kick in the other 18.
I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was worth exploring.
The Sprint.
Yeah, but I mean, how long have we known they wanted more antennas? Because if this is just like something that came down from the skies recently, if we feel like being benevolent, we can just earmark that, and there's half of our
Hasn't been
fireworks.
budgeted.
No, it's not in the budget. It's come up this fiscal year, as far as I know. Glenn would be a better source of telling you when exactly they first approached us, but I think it's been at least a few months.
Yeah, but if it's not in the budget, then it is pretty much a windfall.
I hate to play devil's advocate with my own self, but. But, I mean, the only thing is when we've read in the paper about Downers Grove, and you look at the budgets coming up and things like that, and we got to prioritize. And, if that means we need a new police officer versus getting fireworks, we may have, we take the I would take the officer. We need a new, something for public safety versus the fireworks. You may have to put the fireworks off. So as much as I would like to see the fireworks go, we're going to have to prioritize that budget. And
well, I should also mention, too, that the Citizens Finance Planning Board, they're right now gathering a lot of information from different departments. And I know from talking to Spencer Parker this week that one of the things they're looking at are our hotel motel funds and how we're spending that. So they may have some thoughts along that line as well. I think they're meeting next week, and I believe some of the information that they requested related to that will be going to them next week.
But I think all the options are open right now.
And I also say to the public and the audience out there, got any ideas? Bring them on.
Yep.
Because we want to continue to do these things for the residents here of Westmont as well as those who come in from outside, because the ones that come in from outside, ladies and gentlemen, spend money here, and that just helps everything go along.
Especially since Downers just went through, their village board just went through with a machete. And not only did they cancel they got rid of 25 jobs to save over $1 million, they canceled the entire Heritage Fest. So folks in Downers are going to be looking for stuff to do. So I think that it behooves all of us to have fireworks with food tents and Taste of Westmont, because if other towns don't have it and people are
Where are
looking
they gonna
somewhere
go?
to take their family, it's a win-win.
That's a very good point.
I talked to Ron Searle earlier today and complimented him on the fact that we have gone back, he has gone back with Fred and the staff and looked at budget cuts more than 2 years ago. And I kept on asking Ron and Fred, what is happening to all these other villages around us? They're not talking about cutbacks like we are. What is going on? Do they have a lot more money than we do? And lo and behold, look at what's happened in the last 6 months, starting with Naperville and now Downers Grove and all these towns. So my compliments to Ron and our staff for going back and being more proactive in terms of making budget cuts that needed to be made, that were difficult for all of us, but
Well, thank you,
facing
but
them head on.
We certainly didn't have a crystal ball for the fall of 2008. I think that surprised everybody. But
it's part of the conservative attitude that
We were a little better
we have,
prepared, I think.
projected and followed very closely with staff, and we all appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments on fireworks?
And that will not be on Monday's agenda either.
Okay.
Monday's agenda is looking pretty slim.
Yeah,
Next
getting
item.
smaller. It's not going to be a Forsley meeting on Monday.
Release agreement. Board to consider an ordinance approving a release agreement with Lexon Insurance Company providing surety bond funds to the village for the residences of Oak Brook Hills. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. The mayor and trustees, I think, are aware of an unfortunate incident which has occurred in the last 18 months or so with regard to the subdivision known as the Residences of Oak Brook Hills, adjacent to the Marriott Hotel and the golf course out on the north end of town. The bank foreclosed on the developer. Fortunately for the village and for the residents of the HOA up there, out of, I think it was a 46-unit dwelling unit subdivision, about 38 units were already complete. We just did have a few loose ends, if you will, public improvements that were not completed, things that should be completed to make that a high-quality area for the residents who live there to enjoy, as well as to be added to the tax base for the village of Westmont. We had a surety instrument in place with the Lexon Insurance Company that guaranteed completion of some of the public improvements out there rather than a letter of credit, and we approached this foreclosure situation with the court-appointed receiver with some trepidation. My experience in the insurance industry is that oftentimes you get involved in discussions with surety companies and they can be very difficult to deal with. I'm very pleased to stand before you tonight and say we did not find that to be the case in the instance of Lexon Insurance Company, with John and Anne Marie's guidance leading us through the process. I want to also commend Kim Nickel, the village planning engineer, for her ability to put together a punch list of things that the village requires to be done and monitoring the requirements that DuPage County had in mind. We were able to put together, I think, a pretty good idea, an indication of what remained to be done out there and how we could do a source and use of funds. Now, not only do we have a surety instrument that is before you tonight in the settlement amount of roughly $170,000, there's also a $10,000 subdivision bond that the village holds that was put up by the subdivision developer prior to their foreclosure at the beginning of the process, and a series of, I think it's $2,000 individual unit bonds that can all be brought to bear to complete some of these requirements. And I was, not being necessarily a mathematical thinker, more a verbal communicator, I was able to put this together in the form of a narrative, but had to rely on Spencer Parker and Alicia in the finance department to convert that to the spreadsheet that you see before you tonight. And the bottom line to all this is, once we take all of those assets from the Lexon Insurance Company, from the surety instrument, and the other bonds that the village has, we believe that there's going to be roughly $50,133 left over for the homeowners association to do some optional things that's kind of on their wish list of things that they'd like to have done. And that may or may not cover all of the things that they want to have done. The final surface course on the private road out there, for example, we estimate to be in the vicinity of $61,000 to complete, depending on what types of quotations they may be able to get next season. But this would go a long way towards getting them that, and they have a little flexibility with the landscaping line item budget that was guaranteed by the surety instrument. So we're very pleased that the Lexon Insurance Company has worked with us. We're very satisfied with what we've got, and we continue to work with the HOA out there at the residences of Oak Brook Hills to complete the final requirements in public improvements. And we hope that we can end up with a very successful development, one that the residents and the community can be proud of. We believe that's going to be the case.
Questions from board members?
Just out of curiosity, you know, I appreciate they put them down here, that these are good faith estimates and cannot be guaranteed. Now, let's say that come spring, we start getting into this. If they're over these numbers, I mean, does it just stop then, Fred, or do they have to do, how are they, the homeowners are going to have to come up with the money?
That would be the worst case scenario, Trustee. We don't anticipate that that's going to be the case, because while we can't guarantee these numbers, we do have a very high degree of confidence in them and have verified them very recently with landscaping companies, for example, and we've got other good estimates. Quite to the contrary, one of the estimates came back at about a 40% savings from what we had originally calculated. So we feel pretty confident in the numbers, but you know, upon advice of legal counsel, you want to put things like disclaimers that say we can't guarantee those numbers, even though we do have a great level of confidence in them.
And all the residents up there understand this too,
yes, they
correct?
do. And you know, worst case scenario, let's say things came in way beyond budget, or you know, some cost of materials skyrocketed for some unknown reason, that would be the responsibility of the HOA to complete the public improvements that are required by the surety instrument.
Good.
Any other comments? Finance ordinance number 15.
Waive the reading?
Request to waive the reading. Purchase orders. Questions on purchase orders? I'm sure there's nothing else to come before the board before we adjourn this evening, so I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Oh, let's make sure it's a Horsley night.
Roll call
Nobody
in.
seconded.
On the adjournment, please.
Trustee Emery?
Yes.
Trustee Horsley? What time is it?
Oh, yes.
2 hours. Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Fleming?
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow? Yes. Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.